Welcome to the Troubled Artists Podcast, Episode 24, Amy Limpinyakul.
Welcome back to the Troubled Artists Podcast. Today I am here with Amy Limpinyakul. Amy Limpinyakul is a Chicago-raised cinematographer and has worked on acclaimed projects, including FX's The Bear, the upcoming A24 film Enemies, an award-winning pilot, Hank and Willow, and she has been recently accepted into both the AFI Cinematography Intensive for Women and the ASC Visions Program, highlighting her rising talent as a cinematographer. So, Amy, thank you for being on the show. So before we begin, I'd like to ask this question. Why don't you tell us in your own words, who is Amy Limpinyakul?
For sure. Thanks for having me. Who am I? I am a born and raised proud Chicagoan, child of immigrants. Um, Grew up in a neighborhood just full of immigrants. And yeah, just like a kid who came from skateboarding and went to film school and made their way into this podcast.
For those that don't know, me and Amy, we actually did work on a few projects in the past because I can remember one of the very first times I was on a film set was back in 2014 when it was Graybeard. I don't know if you remember that project, but yeah, that was like,
Of course.
that was like, for me, one of the very first times I was on a film set, me and my cousin. So it was just like just like eye-opening for me. And yeah, it was such a great experience. And from there, just been continuing to build my craft. So I am curious to know, just how did you get into cinematography? Was it something that you discovered early in life or later on in life? Just why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, it's really just something that I somewhat stumbled into. I didn't know what cinematography was. I wanted to go to film school because as a teenager, as a kid, I started making like little skateboarding videos with all my friends. And then when I discovered skate videos, that were a little more artistic, particularly Spike Jonze videos. He has just some of my favorite videos that I would watch obsessively just to understand that you can add elements of, just things that weren't based in reality, little skits and things you can incorporate into, what's essentially a documentary. That kind of just really inspired me to go to film school. I kind of went in thinking that I would just be a director. I think a lot of kids go to film school thinking there's going to be directors. And I didn't know about cinematography. I took a cinematography class as a requirement for my major. And in the class, we watched Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford, and something about that movie, just like it did something to me on my insides that I was like, some of these shots are just so amazing, so powerful. And from then on, I just like wanted to know how to do that. And so from that point on, I just kind of shifted my focus in film school to be all cinematography based. I wanted to know everything about lighting and camera movement. Yeah, I kind of became obsessed with it.
Yeah, no, that's a really great film. I think like one of the famous shots is like on like the railroad tracks, right, with the light shining behind. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen that. Very great shot. I want to highlight some of the work that you've done. The first one specifically being The Bear, because it's such an amazing show. My family and I, we love the show, and everybody, it's won so many awards and stuff. I saw that you were like a second unit DP on the show, and something that I've always loved about the show, I mean, aside from like the acting and the story, which are very phenomenal, but also just like the shots of Chicago. Did you have like a big part in doing that? Because that's something that I really enjoyed watching.
Yeah. So the part that I was specifically a part of was season 3, episode 2. There's like an opening sequence that happens, and it's like this sequence that is Chicago waking up. And so it's a lot of these like early dawn shots of the city, but as well, there were no actors in it, but we had a bunch of people, like everyday people who do everyday jobs, who wake up before dawn to go to work, to make food for people, to hotel staff, just kind of service workers. all throughout Chicago, primarily immigrants as well. So just the whole thing to me felt so significant. That is like probably my favorite thing that I've got to do to date, aside from it being on the bear, obviously, which is like really, really cool. But the fact that I got to showcase Chicago, the Chicago that I know, the working class families, the immigrants who get up and grind and hustle and keep the city moving on a daily basis, that was like super significant to me. And because I, was born and raised in the city, they really took my suggestions in terms of like places we should film. So it's like literally the Chicago that I know, the places that I went to growing up, kind of all around this sequence. So yeah, that was just like a really, really important thing for me. Like it felt really good to be a part of it.
Yeah, yeah. And I remember watching that. It's really great cinematography and yeah, it's just a really great opportunity that you got to work on that show. I also saw that you had some part in doing like the wedding episode. Again, very great episode, you know. I also saw that you recently worked on this upcoming A24 film, Enemies, with Alan White and Austin Butler. Could you talk a little bit about that, or is that still like kind of under secrecy, or can you talk about that?
Um, Yeah, I like so like the people who work on the Bear, the camera assistants, they ended up working on that movie as well. And I think they were all of out of the blue, the DP and the director needed these second unit shots. And so, the camera assistants recommended me, which is I'm forever grateful for. But yeah, it was just kind of like going around Chicago getting shots and then just getting like a bunch of like little insert shots and things. And then we had another big like train day where we just got shots from the train and I just like the really fun like putting cameras in like weird places and just kind of like going around the city getting cool shots. So that was really cool to be a part of too. The main DP, Xavier Kitchener. I may be pronouncing that incorrectly, and I'm very sorry if I am. But fabulous, amazing work. He shot Past Lives recently, and The Materialist that just came out, and he's just a phenomenal person. Yeah, had a really really good time on that for sure.
Mm. Yeah, that's really cool. And I wish you just continued success on your cinematography career because it sounds like it's really going places. So I'm excited
Thank
to
you.
see where it ultimately leads up. Is there any other like highlights that you want to discuss just about your cinematography career so far?
Yeah, this is the part that's like difficult because it's hard to talk about myself. But yeah, I don't know, just in general, just been doing a lot more shooting, a lot of short films this year. Probably my biggest achievement to date is earlier this year, went to Japan to shoot a documentary for the MLB. It was in tandem with the Tokyo series, so the Chicago Cubs and the LA Dodgers played some exhibition games in Tokyo and then played games against like official season games, their opening season games in Tokyo as well. It was more so a documentary about what baseball means to the Japanese people and just the cultural differences and the significance in general. We kind of just followed subjects from all over the country. So we had like an 85-year-old woman who was a coach on the little league team, who was such a character. We had like Otani's like number one fan who lives in the same town that Otani grew up in and had been following Otani since high school and like has like every piece of memorabilia you can imagine. So we just had like a bunch of like very interesting people that we just kind of like followed around, kind of see what they did day to day, as well as film a little bit of like the exhibition games against the Osaka team and the Tokyo team that the Cubs and Dodgers both played against, and then the main game too. So it was just a really cool experience, just being completely out of my comfort zone, a country I've never been to, a language that I don't speak, a whole crew that was all Japanese. It was a great learning experience and a really good time for sure.
Yeah, that sounds like a really great time. But yeah, it was cool because I'm also a Cubs fan. I don't know if you
Yeah.
could see like some of stuff I have. But yeah.
I'm actually a Sox fan, even though I grew up on the north side. But I think I was like an obligatory Cubs fan, especially there because everyone there is like obsessed with Otani. So there was hardly a Cubs jersey in sight. It was all like Dodgers gear. Everyone's like obsessed with Otani over there.
Oh
So
yeah.
so I did actually feel bad for the Cubs. I was like, all right, I'll cheer on the Cubs for now. But when I get back, I'll be a Sox fan.
Mm. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that. But yeah, I've always just like a big supporter of like Chicago teams. So yeah, the
Yeah, for
Cubs,
sure.
Bears, Blackhawks. So yeah. So I did also want to mention because you were recently accepted into like this like cinematography like workshop. Could you talk about your experience on that?
Yeah, that was an incredible experience. Yeah, I got accepted with 11 other women, so it was 12 of us total, and it was 4 days. They were like four, like 13 to 14-hour days. They basically took the AFI, the 2 year program, and just smashed it into a 4 day thing. So there's a lot of workshops, a lot of like hands-on stuff. Met some amazing women. I still keep up with most of them today. Always just like chatting and just like giving each other jobs and advice and things. So the program itself was pretty incredible. We just had some amazing cinematographers come in every single day to teach workshops or to screen like their movies and have a Q&A afterwards. And they were all open to keeping in touch afterwards. Yeah, I would say the highlight of it was going to Panavision and meeting Dan Sasaki, who makes all the Panavision lenses. And he was the biggest like lens nerd in the best way. He was just describing things that like I had never even thought about. And he was at the time he was designing a new like anamorphic flare, which is like just like that concept is like just so crazy to think about. And yeah, he just like showed us the lens and then he was like asking our opinion of like what we thought about the flare and stuff. And we were just like, that's so crazy. You're like the master of lenses and you want like our opinion. Like, I don't know. He was really, really cool. But yeah, just meeting all the cinematographers, all the professional, like a lot of ASC cinematographers and just like, yeah, very, very lovely people. And also just how like approachable these amazing cinematographers are. They're all like incredibly approachable. um, so that just like it just felt good that like I don't know that everyone's like grounded.
Yeah, I mean, again, that sounds like a really cool experience, meeting all these wonderful women cinematographers, and yeah, just it is just really cool, just like, with the film industry being like a male dominant type industry, it's really great to see women, just coming into these roles as cinematographers, as also as just like directors or writers or editors, it's really great just to see their voices and like their vision being on the screen, So I do applaud you for doing that. And again, and I've seen your work. I've seen like your demo reel, and of course, like that shot on the bear. And yeah, again, it's just really really great work. And yeah, again, I just wish you continued success with that.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
What have been some of like the struggles that you've kind of faced throughout, your cinematography career?
Yeah, I think like I feel like there's constant struggle. There's always some kind of struggle. I think yeah, especially up until more recently, I think just the idea of like just thinking that I'm not going to reach my career goals, just, there's always that struggle of like, oh, I'm not shooting enough, I'm not doing enough. There's always like anytime you do an interview and, you don't get the job or something, that's like the first thought is always like, what did I do wrong? Why am I not good enough and all these things. It's just like, but I think the thing that I've learned over the years is that, maybe you just weren't right for that project. It doesn't mean that you were necessarily like bad or wrong. It's just that it didn't line up. Or, I've definitely been in scenarios as well where I've been in an interview with a director, but it became apparent after the fact that they had already picked their DP and they were just interviewing people to appease, the studio or, the producers or, just appease everyone else to say like, hey, I did my due diligence. This is who I want to go with. So there's always that. I think the biggest thing scenario that I struggled with for a couple of years was I had signed on to like this short film project and had multiple meetings with the director and the producer. We went through the shot list and the storyboards. They weren't Chicago local, so I had pretty much helped them crew up the entire crew. I offered all of my gear to help because it was like this like kind of lower budget thing. And like maybe a month out to filming, I get this call from a director friend of mine who's like really well connected. She had recommended me for this other project that if it like came to fruition would have been really good for my career. It would have had like, known actors and like all of these things. And there was potential overlap between the project that I had signed on to and this one that I got a call about. And I was very transparent about it to the people that I signed on to with the short film. And I was like, okay, here's a scenario. I'm gonna help you find someone to replace me if it overlaps and if it doesn't work out, and I'll still give you all my gear and stuff. And pretty much got like radio silence from them, and they had like replaced me even though the other project wasn't even like a for sure thing yet. But I was just being transparent so that they didn't get screwed, like, so that it wasn't like a week out and I was like, hey, I can't do this project anymore. And yeah, it was radio silence, and it ate me up for like 2 years. Like I was like so bummed about it. I was like, man, I really screwed up, and like I would just randomly think about it sometimes and just feel really bad about that scenario. And I was talking to my friend one day, just casually, Veronica Buza, who's an amazing cinematographer. She is like someone that I definitely look up to. I've known her since film school, and she went to AFI. She did the full course, and she's someone who I think is like several steps ahead of me. So I like definitely admire her, and will call her for advice all the time. But yeah, we're just casually talking about it, and I mentioned it, and she was like, well, like that happens like all the time in this business, like, and like if they don't support you, if they didn't come to you with like uh support and being happy for you that you could have gotten this like bigger project or something, like, then those aren't people that you really want to surround yourself with. And it just like, I don't know, just like putting it into that perspective of like, oh, they didn't support me, as opposed to like me feeling like I did something really bad, you know? Especially, yeah, I don't know. It's just like a really weird thing, but like just having that perspective on it just like really changed my mind of like, oh, you know what? That's true. Like, they obviously didn't care for my like success at all. Like, I don't know. It was a very like good lesson to not like have that ruin you for 2 years.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, I can understand because sometimes, the industry, it could be very, very difficult, sometimes you got to be careful with the people that you work with. Yeah, I mean, but it always is great to surround yourself with, other friends and people that support you, and just to let you know that, hey, listen, it's not your fault, you're not alone. And because I feel like there's a lot of filmmakers, or not even just filmmakers, just artists in general, that can maybe sometimes take stuff a bit too personally, and it can affect them, and it can, make them say like, oh, maybe I shouldn't even do this anymore, and then they go and do something else. But you have to understand that the work that you do, it is really great work, and you just have to continue to to build your craft. And you're going to get like those naysayers out there that don't like it, or people that, like you said, give you sort of this radio silence, but as long as you can find the courage and the passion in yourself, you'll continue to do great things. Because, I've had moments like that, like where someone hasn't responded back, or, I haven't gotten an interview, or, that sort of thing. And it's always like you said, it's like, oh, what did I do wrong? What could I have done differently? And that sort of thing. And, sometimes I just put so much negativity on myself, but you have to kind of just step back and just be like, okay, like you said, maybe I just wasn't right for this specific project. It wasn't anything personally about my work that they didn't like. Over time, you just continue to do the best work that you can. Like you say, getting practice with, doing short films or commercials, or, whichever art form you may be doing, just continuing to build that craft, and just continuing to put yourself out there. That's very important, because, you're going to get, a whole lot more no's than you are going to get yeses. And, again, you just can't let that overtake you, all that negativity, because, when you hear that one yes, it's just always like so fulfilling, and you just continue to again, just do the best work that you can, and meet and network with great people, and, yeah, so don't let like that, don't let those naysayers and that negativity overtake you, just continue to build that positivity, and you'll continue to do great things.
Absolutely.
I do want to talk about just like sort of your upbringings as a cinematographer. I know you mentioned Veronica was someone that you looked up to as a cinematographer, but is there any other like just movies or cinematographers specifically that have influenced your passion as a cinematographer?
That's a kind of a tough one. Honestly, like I feel like it's hard, like yeah, I don't know. I feel like I always go into movies not wanting to know anything about it in particular. I feel like that kind of ruins, like I don't like watching trailers. I'll like turn off a trailer. The beginning of before a movie screens, when it shows you like all those trailers, like that's like my least favorite part because it's just like I don't want any preconceived notions going into a movie. And if I can watch a movie and not think about how did they do that? Like, like, oh, that shot was crazy. How did they do that? Like in the first viewing, because I'm so engrossed into what's going on. Um, those are the movies that I definitely like the most. Maybe on a second or third viewing, I'll think about it, but I like just not having to think about um, necessarily the cinematography on anything. Um, I just want it to like support the story, and that's kind of like the main goal of cinematography, in my opinion, is to like support the film and maybe not stand out as much, unless I don't think it needs to stand out, but if it's, something crazy, like something crazy is happening in the movie, then it's like that's when you get to have all those fun shots and things. But it should feel very really fluid. But yeah, I think like definitely a lot of like female cinematographers are people that I really look up to. Um, the person that I just from experience, like my last semester of film school, I actually started working on a TV show as a camera PA on Chicago Fire, and Lisa Wiegand was the DP on that, and that was like so crazy to see like for the first time being on a set that large and have a female cinematographer at the helm of everything, and like just how fluid everything was with her. Like that was like very inspiring to me. So it's like the people and how they can manage and the techniques and everything. Like um that's like really cool to see, like in person, just like going on these sets and just like all this chaos is happening, but the DP's like holding it all down. Like that's like the coolest thing to see. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting that you say like, cinematography, because yeah, it should go hand in hand with everything, like, unless there's certain cases where it needs to stand out. But yeah, cinematography is just a great way, it to help further tell the story, and it's just one of these many tools that it comes to making a film. There's the cinematography, the music, the editing, the sound design, there's so much different aspects that go into making a film, and then when it all finally comes together, you get this amazing, amazing film, and yeah, for me, that's why I love, film so much because there's just so much that can go into it. Like I love cinematography, but I also love editing, and putting it all together, just seeing what we captured and then just putting it piece by piece and then adding, cool like transitions or, just adding like these cool stuff and then just seeing it come to life is just really, really cool. And learn over time, continue to learn. I feel like everyone's continuing to learn. Take some advice from people because they have ideas that you may never have thought of. I've had great ideas come from like production assistants and, just, hearing what they have to say. It's like, oh, I never thought of that. And then, you put it into action and then it's like, oh, wow, it really worked out, So yeah, a great idea can come from anywhere. That's why for me as a director, I'm always very collaborative with other people. Again, not just like my actors or my DP, just like everyone in general. Like I said, the production assistants, because that's how, a lot of us start like in this industry as PAs, running around getting coffee and getting coffees and all that. But that's just sort of like my advice, So just if you want to get into this industry, start off as like a production assistant, so that way you can just kind of take like a seat and then just kind of see like how the overall film experience is. So yeah, it is really cool. And do you have any like advice that you want to give to any up and coming filmmakers or cinematographers out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, kind of piggybacking what you just said is like just like having an understanding of like all of the departments, no matter what you're doing, will really excel whatever you want to do. For example, like yeah, as a cinematographer, if I understand editing or a little bit of VFX or, production design, it'll help me be a better DP. Like I can understand the edit. I can say, if we did this, then in the edit, this can happen, Um, and in terms of like even like designing a room, if I know I want a shot from like here, how are we going to balance that, and there's always just like any position, I think you can learn a lot by learning other crafts in general. So I think as the more knowledge you have in general is just going to make you a better at whatever you want to end up doing. So I think that, and just having good collaborations with all departments across the board, good relationships with all departments across the board, truly important. And yeah, as a DP too, you kind of end up getting what you need because of that. If you're in a room, you go to a room and you scout and, you're like, okay, how am I going to light this room? There's no windows. The ceilings are low, then it's like, okay, how do I talk to the production designer to make this room full of lamps, or like something that you can augment or like, you know, so it's a lot of like understanding those things. But yeah, I think in general, my best advice would be to surround yourself with people who are better than you, um, who support you, um, and just, I think especially like younger people starting out, I think might have a harder time. I think like really when you're starting out and you're young, you kind of have this notion of like, oh, I'm the boss. I need to be in charge. I need to know all the things. I need to tell people what to do. And as you get older, you realize that's not the way to go about it. You kind of just surround yourself with people who you admire, who support you, who you support, and who are better at that job, better at lighting, better at gripping, better at camera than you are. So you guys can collaborate and come up with better ideas. Your idea might not always be the best, and their idea might not always be the best, but having that collaboration, having someone that you really trust on just surrounding you always is a really, really good thing. That would be my best advice. Also, I would say let people let people teach you things. That's kind of like my biggest pet peeve is when young kids kind of come into set and they went to film school and they definitely know things. They definitely have learned things. Um, but someone who's a little more senior, has more miles on them, wants to show them something, wants to teach them something, and the attitude of, oh, I know, because I think honestly it comes from a place of like, oh, I don't want people to think I don't know what I'm doing because then I won't get hired. I think that's a terrible attitude to have. um, I think if you let somebody teach you something, it shows that they believe in you. They believe in you enough to want to show you something. Like, they see something in you, they see potential in you, and they want to help you. So even if it's something that you already know, just take the advice. There's no need to like get defensive about anything. And if you just keep doing that throughout your whole career, you're gonna end up learning so much, and people are gonna like you a lot more. So that would be, especially for kids starting out, that would be my number one advice, is to let people teach you something. We're not doing surgery, or it's not rocket science. It's like we're making movies. Ultimately it should be fun, so let's all have fun. We're spending so many hours together, so yeah, just keep a positive attitude. And yeah, just try to have a good time anytime you're on set.
Yeah, definitely. Um, I do want to ask, like, what is it the specifically that draws you to a project?
Yeah, honestly, that's something I'm still trying to figure out and find my voice in. I'm just over the other side of the hump of saying yes to everything, having that mentality of saying yes to everything. Um, so I'm starting to say no to things now. And so, in terms of picking and choosing, I think like where I am currently, especially with, shooting a lot of short films and smaller projects, I get a lot of first-time directors, um, specifically first-time writer directors. Um, and I feel like the scripts are never are it's the first script. It's not going to be the absolute best. But if there's a story there, if there's something in there that I can resonate with, that I can agree with, and even if it's something that doesn't really reflect upon me specifically, but it's something I can get behind, that's kind of like the first thing I'm looking for. The next thing is if I feel the director is someone who is going to be open to collaboration and going to be open to hearing me out, hearing the crew out, and just being generally reasonable. I think like a lot of first time directors may have a harder time grasping the reality of the budget and just like the scale of their script versus the budget that they're able to get together. Um, so I think someone who is open to really pivoting or figuring out creative ways to bring the ideas forward with what the resources allow. Um, so yeah, I think just people who are a little more open-minded and seems like a really good collaborator. That's kind of who I'm looking for in a director, because I think in the long run as well, they're just going to be more pleasant to be around, and they're just going to continue to get better. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. Something that I'm kind of like learning a lot more about too is like um, having been interviewed to shoot projects and being the one who was, scrutinized and everything. Um, like, I think an important thing for cinematographers in those interviews is to take that opportunity to interview the director as well. That's something that I've learned a little too late in life, but I know that now. But yeah, ask questions about, what their vision for the project is. I know you're there to talk about what you see in the project, but you can do the reverse as well, and from there you can get a better idea of like how the project might go, whether you feel like you're a good fit for it or not. So that's something else that I think is important to think about when choosing to take on projects.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. The director and DP relationship is very important, because, you guys are working very closely together to help bring the vision to life, so yeah, it is very important to collaborate with them. And I do want to ask, like, do you have any like current projects in the works or something that you're working on? Because, I am excited just to see like what sort of projects you have up and coming.
Yeah, yeah. So right now I am color grading that MLB doc that I talked about previously. And then I recently just shot this really cool short film. It's like a silent short film that starts off as like a slapstick comedy to a degree, and then it kind of turns into like an early Peter Jackson zombie-esque movie in terms of the tone. It's like a really, really fun short. We shot it on Super 16 as well. So we shipped the film off last week, eagerly awaiting its return. So that's very exciting and a little nerve-wracking because you really don't know for sure if it's in focus and exposed properly until you can actually see it. That is very, very exciting and very nerve-wracking. So that's what I'm currently waiting on. And then a future project that I have coming up that I just shot some B-roll for. We're gonna shoot the main project in the spring. It's a short film that is it's a political environmental short film with puppets. So the whole film is puppets. And that will be I'm very excited to see just how the puppets are going to look and what the set builds are going to be. I've never shot anything that is that scale. Um a smaller scale. So yeah, just the challenge of figuring that out. There's a lot of challenges in that film that are gonna be really fun to figure out. So I'm very excited about that project too. That one's called Enough, and that one will come out. I don't know when it'll come out, but we're gonna start filming in the spring. So very excited.
In terms of cinematography, is there like a certain like because you mentioned you worked with Super 35. Is there like a specific camera that you like to work on, like a red camera or an Alexa? Is there a certain camera that you attach to the most?
In theory, I would like to say no, but in reality, I'm kind of shooting Sony Venice too, for the most part now. It's just such a convenient camera, and it looks great. I love the science, the color science behind it. I think it looks phenomenal. And just the ease of use is like, because the last thing you want as a DP is to be bogged down by technical issues or technical things. So the fact that it's dual ISO, it has all the ND that it's the full range of ND. You could drop in and you could just push a button and you have an ND3 in. Like just that fluidity, that ease of use, like that is so valuable because it ends up shaving off seconds, and any second you can shave off as a DP, you just get more time to allocate your time better to shaping light or something, like getting another rehearsal in. Um, so yeah, just the ease of use of that camera. Um, and I think it looks great, and it's full frame. I love the full frame format. And yeah, just everything about it I think is great. So real answer, Sony Venice 2, but in theory, any camera works.
That is true. That is true. Yeah. I mean, you can make a project, on your iPhone and, yeah, you can have great results. I mean, the cameras on those phones nowadays are like, 4K, 120 frames per second, so there's just so much that you can do. Don't worry, especially when you're starting out, like, don't worry about like getting all the big fancy gear right away. If you have access to just your phone and, a couple of your friends and stuff, just make something, make a film, go out and make it. And, it may not be the greatest thing in the world, but, you just, like we say, practice, continue to build your work, and, you'll continue to do great things.
Yeah, story is the most important. So
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
yeah. I definitely agree with that.
Yes, absolutely. Um, I guess like for me, like the camera that I use right here is the Blackmagic, the 6K Pro. So I've been using that one. But before, I used like just like a DSLR, camera starting out, and then before that it was like, just like camcorders and stuff. But yeah, it's just really great, just working with what you have, and just seeing like the creativity kind of flow when you're on set, because every camera has their limitations, so working around that, if the ISO, you don't want to crank up the ISO too much, so you have to bring in more lights, or you have to find another like alternative, with the shots, so there's just so much like creative thinking that goes, you know, on set, because sometimes, time, there's not enough time in the world, when it comes to film. So just continuing, just to be a quick thinker, and seeing it all, especially seeing it all come together and watching it on the big screen, it's moments like that where, you tell yourself like, yeah, it was worth it, because, there's so much stuff that can happen on set, a lot of stress and all that stuff, but then just seeing it all come together in the end, it's like, oh yeah, it was worth it. Is there anything else that you want to add in before we sign off?
Yeah, I guess just, this is I think it's easy for us to feel like we might be in competition or whatnot. Chicago's very, I think, a very like welcoming and warm sort of environment in the filmmaking scene. But I think in general, I think we should all like just support each other, love each other, don't gatekeep. I think it's really important that that we uplift each other together, especially, the ones who stayed in Chicago, like we gotta really support each other. So yeah, just be kind and love one another.
Thank you for tuning in to the Troubled Artists podcast. Have a great day.